G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder. Strap yourselves in, because this is going to be a little bit exciting. I'm in the p63, and for those of you who don't know, the p63 is one of my most played props. I probably have something like 400 games in p63s in both ground battles and air battles. And to be honest, there is a really good reason for it. It's a good plane, and a lot of people seem to overlook this thing. It sits in 3 different tech trees, and for me, whilst I don't have the Soviet ones, I have got the American and French ones. Now, the French one is a little bit special because it's the C5, which means it's the best one. The C5 is kind of like the A10, but a little bit better. I believe it's got a slightly better engine, and it's also got armored doors. So it's got a little bit more protection for the pilot and a little bit more go to it. I like it better. And as you can see, every time I check the map or something like that, you'll see my ace crew. And I didn't pay for Golden Eagles for it. I did not use Golden Eagles at all. I ground out that ace crew purely by hand. I did put a talisman on it, so, it's a little bit easier. But that's because I used this plane to grind out my French. Believe it or not, I actually bought the Naval with my own money a little bit after. Yes, that's right. After I ground out the French tech tree. Obviously, I still have the Super Mystère and the F86K to go through. But for the most part, this thing is wild fun. I love it. I absolutely love it. I first started playing this thing when the French tree came out. And I used to play the P63 a little bit. I used to play it with an old friend. I used to play it a little bit in ground forces. But I really didn't pick up the P63 until I got to the French. And that's because I could not find a good plane to grind with. I didn't like the Naval at the time. I didn't think it was really worth it. It didn't have an interceptor spawn. It was really, really hard to fly. And the P63 seemed like a decent option. I had the P63 unlocked at the time. I had a couple of other things going for me. And honestly, I talismaned it and I've never looked back. I absolutely love this plane, and you'll see exactly why in the battle. What I'm doing is I'm climbing at a certain speed. Now, what you want to do is climb not at a set angle, but you want to climb at around 250 to 280 kilometers per hour. If you're traveling any slower, you'll end up not generating enough lift, and you won't rise as fast, I suppose. But at the same time, if you just put the nose at 0 degrees, at dead flat, then you'll only climb based on your lift and you won't have any other extra climbs. So finding a middle ground is really important. What you do in props is you climb at a set speed. You sit at a speed where it's roughly somewhere in between that best fit. For me, it tends to be around 250 kilometers per hour. It is slightly different for every plane, and you can find that on the stat cards and on climb and mech charts that I'll try and leave a link to in the description. But these particular planes, for me, what I can see is they thrive around 260 to 250 kilometers an hour specifically. And that's because of one main thing. The engine is in the center, and what you want to do as you get up to altitude is keep your speed so that you can go into combat. Now, they don't seem to be connected at first, but as soon as you realize that the weight distribution of the plane is very much in the center of the plane, kind of like the Naval, in fact, it's really, really straightforward. The plane feels like it is heavy in the center, and it will play like that. So what you have to do is keep that in mind when you go into dogfights. This thing can potentially be a little bit floaty, but not nearly as floaty as something that had an engine in the nose. Think of it as the nose pulls the plane forward, and everything you get from that engine is pulling the plane forward, and it's pulling it from the nose. If the engine is in the center, think of it like it's pulling it from the middle, because, well, that's kind of what it does. That's how it feels, at least. That's how it flies to me. That's how I perceive it to fly. It doesn't quite hang well. It doesn't sit and just keep that nose up forever. It tends to sort of wobble around a little bit, and the best place for the P63 is for it to be flown at speed. A lot of pilots really do not like the P63. And that's for a couple of main reasons. One, it has poor performance at high altitude. And you'll see this. I am going to struggle outrunning BF-109s and G55s at altitude. Two, it has a big whopping great 37 that everyone thinks that you have to aim and you have to get kills with. No, you don't. You really don't. Pretend that the 37 isn't there and run a set of 50 cals with some sort of tracer. Look for that tracer and completely ignore the 37. Pretend it's not there, because let's face it, it's not that great a gun. It has a really low velocity, it doesn't have great damage output, and it's really only good against bombers if you're trying to sort of hit that meaty section. You go for, I guess, the front of the bomber with the 50 cals, and at the top, at the center of the bomber, you'll seem to hit the 37, because it's just not a great gun. Here I've got myself a nice bait, and I tend to muck it up because the rudder on this thing is a little bit funky as well, but that's okay because I've gotten a nice critical hit, and that's the last that we'll see of that G55 because he's been set on fire. Nice and easy, very well dealt with, and we've managed to 2v1 this guy, or 3v1 this guy. So, as you can see, I'm sitting at a really low speed, and the thing with the P63 is, if it's at low speed, it has a hard time turning. The P63 does best at a higher speed. Anything above 300 kilometers per hour, it'll start to be really, really nice. And you'll find yourself outturning Yaks, you'll find yourself outturning BF-109s, and in low altitude situations, you can almost find yourself outdoing G55Ss. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing here. You can see a G55 over here, and it looks like he's going for a friendly. So whilst he's distracted, I'm going to get some hits, and I completely miss. Oh well, no biggie. What I'm going to do is I'm going to roll over while the G55 is distracted. He's not really looking at me. He's looking for that F6F, I believe, or he's going to start diving. And I just roll over and start putting it into a dive, picking up a little bit more speed. But there I see a 109 who's pitching straight up for that Hellcat. So what am I going to do? I'm going to bolt as quickly as I can to that BF-109 because he's in an easy spot. And if I can thin the numbers quickly right now, then that's exactly what I will do. And there he goes. You can see my rudder starting to lock up, and this is another thing that the P63 needs to get around. You can't put it above a speed of 600 kilometers per hour and dogfight. One, you're wasting way too much energy, and two, you're starting to lock up the rudder and you won't get the shots that you need. So, if you're starting to get to a high speed, I would say either keep the altitude or gradually decrease your throttle and gradually decrease your altitude, because you're not going to get the shot on. If you desperately need that shot, then maybe decrease your speed, but if I were flying that, I would just keep it at web and go for the altitude, just like I'm going here. I'm conserving that altitude, I'm conserving that energy, making sure that I don't waste it so I have an advantage to throw at them. Those 190s and those G55s that are all below me in a little bit. And you can see this Focke-Wulf decides to go into a vertical and then realizes he's stuffed up and sits in a flat turn. I'm trying to lead the 37 and I'm not getting anywhere. So what you have to do is pretend it doesn't exist. Don't worry about the 37. It's going to be your biggest bane, and it's the thing that you have to get used to the most. I can see the G55 is rolling over for me, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go for the head-on and put it into a dive. This thing, for some reason, at low altitude, picks up a lot of speed in a dive, and it is really, really nice. I get either a fat spark from the 37, or it just loses all its range. And now I'm in a little bit of a predicament, but that's okay because I have a friendly plane with me. And if I can take out the 190 or the G55S now, then I have a bit of an advantage. There he goes. And the G55S has been put into a turn after going into a head-on. So what I'm doing now is I'm switching. The friendly plane will take on whatever's after me, and then I'll take on whatever's after the friendly. And we switch. After each pass, we switch targets, and then we switch targets again, and hopefully, by the time we're finished, they're all dead. But the P63 has another ace up the sleeve that is kind of hard to ignore. This thing is really fast at low altitude. This thing can regularly sit at 500 kilometers per hour without much of an issue in a straight line on the deck. No other plane up to about 5.0, 5.3 can really start doing this. This is something that the P63 has that no other plane has in the game. That sits tier for tier at props. It's fantastic. It is one of these things that you can really use. No other single engine fighter has it. It's so quick. And you can convert that straight into energy like I have here. You can see a BF-109 has just sort of passed in. He misses because he's locking up, and I managed to evade. The 190 is going again straight vertical, putting himself in a really precarious situation, and I managed to absolutely destroy him. I think the 37 connects there, and there goes his plane. That G55 is also looking pretty tasty, and I'm thinking, you know what, maybe I should go in quickly finish him just in case he gets back to base, and this could have been another kill for me. I would have had a lot more kills, well, a couple more kills, in this whole match overall than if I had let them both go. This BF-109 is coming in as well, and he decides to go for a quick shot. He's a G6, so I'm sitting pretty here. This is going to be pretty straightforward. The BF-109 G6, whilst extremely fast and has really good energy retention, sucks in a turn fight because it's heavier. It's a lot heavier than any of the other 109s tier for tier. And honestly, this particular pilot here has wasted a lot of his energy. He's gone into a loop and he's trying to stall me out at my altitude. This is my stomping ground. And aside from the poor shooting, you can see he's really leaving himself open. What he should have done is he should have gone straight for the zoom climb after he'd done his pass on me and he's fired his guns. And he would have had me. But instead, he decides to waste his energy. And this puts him really... Oh, look how easy that was. And with the last of my ammunition. So what do I do now? I have no choice but to go back to base. Well, it's going to be a long match. There are 2 bombers left and a fighter. And I don't see either of them. It looks like the fighter might be returning back to base. And that G55 crashed in the field. So I have myself a few kills up my sleeve. I have 5 kills, an ace, a very nice little ace, and after repairing and rearming, I'm coming back to the battle. Now you can see there in the bottom corner that the BF-109 is going for light AA, and after a little bit of searching and with some communication with a dead teammate, big shout out to this guy, he said he's a subscriber of mine, so, you know, big shout out, man. Much appreciated for the help. You can see there is a big fat 109 in front of me. He's not paying attention. So this makes for a pretty straightforward kill, you might think. And I'm not going to say anything. Oh no. Okay, so if you want to take out a p63 coming straight for you, and you notice him at the last second, I wouldn't go low. I certainly wouldn't go low into the trees, but there are some things that you kind of can do. And as you've probably realized, I'm the last one left on my team. And I was the last one left on my team around about when I killed that BF-109 G6. So I've got a lot of work to do here. I've got a bomber that's crashed, and I've got 1 left. I've killed the fighter, and that should be game, but we're low on tickets. So what I want to do is either go for these ground targets or go for the fighter. And thanks to my teammate, he spotted the fighter for me, the bomber, sorry, and now I'm going to try and hunt this bomber down. This is where you can see the beautiful 37mm on the P63 go to work. This particular cannon, it's much despised by a lot of the community. But to be honest, it's not that bad for bomber hunting. And whilst this thing has a really poor engine for high altitude dogfights, it does have the armament to at least deal with things. And the climb rate isn't too bad, to be honest. A lot of people seem to rat on this plane and you know, think of it as something lesser. But honestly, in Tanks RB, this thing is an absolute beast. I don't know why people don't use this thing, honestly. I would put it above the P47 in capability. Because a lot of people seem to take the P47, get themselves into a dogfight, and realize that they can't win. The P63 has 2 bomb drops, much like the P47. Although it doesn't have the rockets, it does have the 50 cals, and it does have a 37, so you can deal with ground attackers. The 50 cals only benefit you as in the volume of 50 cals, only benefits you with strafing ground targets, which you can do anyway with relative competence in the P63, or taking head-ons against fighters or bombers. And honestly, the P63 is not an underarmed plane. The 50 cals perform fine. There are 2 in the nose and 2 in gondolas under the wings. I think there's enough armament on the P63. It works well. And it sits at 4.0. So it's basically the same battle rating. It doesn't have HVARs, but I don't see the HVARs as any more useful than the guns. The 37 will do the same job as the HVARs. In fact, in some cases it has more penetration. The HVARs, whilst they're nice for hull breaking things maybe, you can practically do that with the 50 cals anyway. And it has the added bonus of being better at low altitude in terms of performance. It's faster than almost anything else at its battle rating. The Bf109 F4 will not be able to catch this in a straight line on the deck. Sure, if you are dived upon, then you're a little bit screwed. Then you need to start turn fighting. But that is the other ace of the P63. You can dogfight. You can't dogfight in the P47. It's too fat. It's too heavy. The P63, you can dogfight all day in this. And I think I need to make a video on the P63 in Ground RB because this thing is fantastic. I put the P63 King Cobra, the event one, into my lineup for my premium lineup. And you can see there the 37 blows the tail of the Dornier 17 clean off. And you know what? I decide I'm not going to go and shoot him down if I can't hit this pilot, which for some reason I didn't. I'm going to let him float to the ground just for a little bit of BM. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. That'll be 7 kills, which could have been 9. It could have been 9 if I'd gotten that G55S, and it could have been 9 if I'd gotten the bomber that crashed on the airfield, which is unfortunate, but I almost had 9 kills, which would have been my record. The P63 is by far, in my opinion, one of my favourite fighters in the game. G55S, P63, F100D, and MiG-19 PT have to be some of the best fighters in this game. I absolutely adore playing them all, and honestly, I seriously think the P63 gets too much of a bad rap for what it's worth. It is a fantastic plane. I would highly recommend learning it, and I would recommend a little bit of patience, and I would recommend a little bit of hard work. And those 2 things will help you realize that the P63 is a fantastic machine. 7 kills in one match, and the match before I think I had 3 kills. It's pretty easy to do well in this when you know what you're doing, and you can surprise a lot of Bf109 and 190 pilots, and you can even give the G55S a run for its money. 7 kills, last man standing, terror of the sky, thunderer, all the accolades. I love getting all these awards, and today is no different. 7 kills and 140k silver lions. I think I was running a booster, but at the same time, you can make pretty much heaps of silver lions with non-premium ones and premium ones as well. Anyway, ladies and gents, thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you next time.